The Victorian government is pushing for new work from home laws, which could see people allowed to use the home office at least twice a week.
We know not everyone can work from home, but we are moving to protect it for those who can.
There's a clear schism about what the government is trying to do. That's why they're gaslighting so many workers in the process. And I think we need to call it out.
Should working from home be a legal right in Australia? Or is it just a COVID hangover that's past its use-by date? The arguments for both sides are heating up. Hello, I'm Chris Bourke, and this is the Bloomberg Australia podcast. Since the pandemic, working from home has gone from occasional perk to pretty much a weekly routine for many Australians. Down here in Victoria, it's become so entrenched that the state government is considering making it a legal right to work from home for at least 2 days a week. Joining me today to discuss the implications of all this and whether it can even be done is Trent Wiltshire. He's the Deputy Program Director for Economic Prosperity and Democracy at the Grattan Institute here in Melbourne. Trent, welcome to the podcast.
Hi Chris, thanks for having me on.
Trent, I'm going to start with a bit of a personal question. Do you like to work from home?
I do, yes. Typically I'm in the office about 2 to 3 days a week and at home the rest of the time.
Okay, so I'm
definitely in the hybrid work camp.
That's a fairly generous work from home policy.
It is, yeah. We sort of have 2 anchor days in the office and then, probably every second week in another day or so.
And so your office is in Melbourne, not too far from mine. From next year, those 2 days you could potentially have the legal right to work from home for 2 days a week. What is the state government's thinking behind this? Is it a pure coincidence that Victoria is heading to the polls next year?
Yeah, I think a big part of the proposed policy is politics. So we saw during the federal election campaign when Peter Dutton proposed to wind back work from home rights of public servants.
Which didn't go down too well.
It didn't go down very well at all. So even though that was only for public servants, people were worried that would meant more broadly they wouldn't be able to work from home. So I think the Victorian Labor Party is taking advantage of that and trying to wedge the coalition into opposing their idea to sort of get a similar result as what happened federally. So that's the kind of cynical political take on it. But the other side is that, working from home is very popular. So their idea, the polling shows that their idea is popular. For the Labor Party, it's a reasonable position, I guess, to want to strengthen workers' rights. So that's in line with what their thinking would be to boost or increase rights to be able to work from home. So that's somewhat reasonable there. I just don't think it's the right way to do it, and we can get into that. But is it necessary? Do you need to mandate 2 days a week for people that can reasonably perform their job at home? Look, I don't think so. I think we're kind of close to the equilibrium of what most firms and most workers are happy with, and that is, if they can, work from home, roughly 2 to 3 days a week and the rest in the office.
Yeah, but, I guess the big question is, can they even do this? I mean, how will they legislate it?
Yeah, I'm not a legal expert, but from what I've seen, it's unclear that they can do it. So Victoria handed over their powers around industrial relations to the Commonwealth back in the 90s. Mm-hmm. So they would have to do it sort of through different ways, I think maybe through anti-discrimination laws or something like that. So whether they can do it legally, I think they're going to investigate that this year. So, it was sort of a policy idea that was floated, not that was clearly defined.
Yeah.
So it is a bit unclear.
Yeah, so this looks like there's some way to go there before we can start celebrating that legal right. But look, Melbourne was one of the world's most locked down cities, as we know, in those dark days of the pandemic. Do you think that's why Victoria is the state that's taking the lead on this?
I think it's a big factor, yeah. So looking at the data, we can see that Melbourne has the highest rates of work from home behind Canberra. So Canberra's the leader. That's really because of the public service there, have really very entrenched working from home patterns. So in Melbourne, about 40% of workers do more than 5 hours of work from home a week, and about 20% work from home more than half the time. But actually Melbourne's numbers are very similar to Sydney. So it's not actually a Melbourne standing out story. It's Melbourne and Sydney are sort of the standouts.
Right.
And then it's Brisbane, Adelaide, and then Perth are sort of the lowest amount of work from home of all the major capitals. So I think because it's become entrenched, it's part of Melbourne culture somewhat due to COVID. I think that is a factor why Labor have proposed this idea.
Yeah, you can certainly see it's pretty noticeable. I think I come into the city most days, and Mondays and Fridays are pretty quiet on Collins Street out there. Look, do you see this move? If we're yet to see if this is actually going to happen, but do you see this move as a potential model for the rest of Australia, or even internationally?
It doesn't look like it. So there hasn't really been a strong follow-on from other state governments supporting this idea. People haven't pushed back too hard, but there's no strong support that this is a great idea. Around the world, it seems like it's one of the only method or ideas in terms of mandating a minimum number of days working from home. So it is unique. So I don't think it's going to happen more broadly. But I do think there is, if the government wanted to give workers more rights to be able to work from home, I think it's probably the wrong way to do it. It's too blunt, the 2-day rule. I think a better idea, first because if this is going to happen, it really should happen at the federal level. So we want consistent laws across the country, given that lots of firms have offices in different states, so it would make sense to have the same laws in all the states. So I think it should happen federally, and it probably should happen via the Fair Work Act. So one way we've thought could be a way that governments could think about it is to strengthen workers' rights to request flexible work under the National Employment Standards in the Fair Work Act. So currently, some workers can request flexible working arrangement, and that includes being able to work from home, but only some people. So only people that have worked for a business for more than 12 months, if they're a parent or a carer, if they're a person with a disability, or are 55 or older, or pregnant, or experiencing family or domestic violence. So there's a certain group of people that can request flexible work, but a business can knock that back if they have reasonable business grounds for doing so. So one way is to maybe expand the categories of people that could work from home. So maybe the biggest one is to let everyone be able to apply for flexible work, and to raise the bar perhaps for businesses to be able to reject those requests. So make it a bit harder for business. So if you wanted to, I think that's a better way of going about it.
It could be a vote winner though, right?
I think that potentially, and I think from what the federal Labor Party have said, I think they would be thinking something along those lines potentially.
So as we were talking before about Melbourne embracing kind of work from home, it has been slower than the rest of the country to return to the office. Office vacancy rates have been stuck at the highest in the nation for some time. But look, last month, the Property Council of Australia said something quite surprising. For the first time since COVID, office vacancies in Melbourne actually fell, not by that much, but they did fall. So for that reason, the council warned against trying to legislate working from home, just as the office market is finally showing signs of stability. What do you think? Do they have a point?
Well, they have a point in terms of they're trying to reflect their members' interests, I guess. So a lot of, clearly, commercial office space in the city was one of the hardest hit sectors due to the work from home revolution. But I don't think we should be setting our work from home policy just thinking about CBD offices and CBD cafes and restaurants. Yes, these were the hardest hit by the changes to our working patterns, but I think we need to set the policy thinking more broadly about what's good for society and what's good for economy. And it's clearly that people have embraced hybrid work, workers like it, many firms like it as well. So yes, that sector was hard hit, but that spending that happened perhaps at CBD cafes has actually gone elsewhere, so it hasn't just disappeared.
Right.
So some data came out last week from payment terminal provider Square showing that some suburban areas are really booming in terms of consumer spending because of work from home. So yes, there's been some adjustment, and the commercial office space has been the hardest hit. But looking at the city more broadly, so Melbourne and Sydney aren't just office buildings that exist from 9 till 5 on weekdays. Foot traffic data shows that CBDs have evolved into more entertainment precincts. So cities are much busier on Saturdays and Sundays now. Thursday night drinks are popular rather than Friday night drinks. So cities have adapted to be, I guess, service a broader range of people at different times than what they did pre-COVID.
Not everyone likes it though, right? There has been pushback from businesses. What have they been most concerned about?
Certainly some businesses are worried about or not liking hybrid work, and when a firm announces a return to office mandate, it gets a lot of media coverage. So some big ones, Commonwealth Bank and ANZ sort of required staff to return to their offices. But often what's lost in the details there is that it's not a full time to return to office. It's just requiring attendance 3 days a week. So I think there's often a media beat up about these return to office mandates. Certainly some companies have demanded 5 days back. And I think if that works for them, that's maybe okay. But perhaps they might see some staff leave that really want to be able to work from home some of the time. So I mentioned it before, I think we're close to that equilibrium about where we will land with hybrid work. That's what the data shows. Things have stabilised. Firms are pretty happy. Workers are pretty happy. Although I would say that there's some evidence from the US where there's the best data is available and similar patterns to Australia, that firms typically want their workers back in the office a little bit more than what they are currently, and workers actually want to be at home a little bit more than they are. So there's a little bit of tension,
right?
But it's not massive. Mm-hmm. And then looking forward, firms in the US actually think work from home is going to be roughly where it is today in 1 year's time. So I think that's sort of where the level's at.
Okay. When we come back, how is working from home changing the lives of Australians? And is it just too late to turn the clock back? Welcome back to the Bloomberg Australia podcast. I'm Chris Bourke. And today I'm talking to Trent Wiltshire from the Grattan Institute, which informs governments on public policy. Look, today we are talking about the future of working from home in the wake of the Victoria government's plans to legislate the right to work from home for 2 days a week. Trent, you and I both work in an office. It's pretty easy for us to work from home, as you said earlier. But if I'm in hospitality or construction, it's going to be much harder to pull that one off. So whether this legislation goes through or not, is work from home, is it kind of creating this two-tier workspace where it's mainly helping out white collar workers and leaving others behind?
Yeah, I think it's a great discussion point. And I think that's true. Some professions have much higher rates of work from home because it can be done. And there is a bit of a divide between those that can do it and those that can't. So you think some of the most important jobs in our society can't be done at home, thinking police, nurses, doctors, teachers, trades. So they, potentially some of that work will be done at home, but only a very small share, if at all. So these people miss out on the benefits and the work-life balance benefits you get from work from home. And that is unfortunate. How will that play out? Well, I think potentially you might see pay actually start to equalise a little bit. So the market might adjust somewhat. So research shows that people that work from home value it at about 5 to 10% of their paycheck. So potentially wages could grow a little bit more slowly in jobs that can be done from home and might rise a little bit in some of those jobs that need full in-person attendance. So we've seen shortage of teachers. That's because teachers are professionals and they could do other jobs as well and vice versa. So people that want to work from home might move away from teaching, but pay might adjust a little bit there. So I think you're certainly right on that inequality between different occupations. But a really important point is that for those within the sort of white collar workforce, hybrid work has actually really helped those people that are actually most disadvantaged or most marginalised. So previously, people with children, people with a disability, carers might have struggled to actually get a job or work full time because of having to commute so much. And we've seen there's quite a few studies have shown that the big beneficiaries of hybrid work are people with disability, parents with young children, people with a health condition, So there's some good Australian evidence that CEDA looked at. Nicholas Bloom, he's sort of the work from home guru. He did some research and found that the driver of high participation of workers with a disability was being able to work from home. So that's sort of the good side of the better side of the inequality debate, I think.
Yeah, which again speaks to why politicians would see this as a great vote winner.
Yeah, and I think a good social outcome for a lot of people.
Yeah. I mean, as for many people, like especially those with children, they just can't imagine a life without flexible working models now.
Yeah, so hybrid work has really changed my life. So my son was born in October 2019. So I actually was only actually in the office full time for a few months before COVID hit, and I was working from home quite frequently. So I can't imagine going back to a world where I'm in the office 5 days a week. It would really make it difficult for my family.
And so that's been a godsend for you, has it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, that's a great example. I guess working from home has really changed how Australians think about work-life balance and career progression even.
Certainly has. So I think the biggest benefit for many people from hybrid work is that work-life balance. The research shows that people devote the time they save from commuting, they put it towards hobbies, they put it towards caring for kids and others, they put it towards side hustles as well, but they also put it towards working more hours, which is really interesting. So the benefits actually from time saved commuting spread broadly just to the individual and to the firm as well. But also more broadly, that helps with congestion on our roads, on public transport. So, there is broad benefits from this hybrid working model.
Yeah, I can tell you from experience, it is much easier to continue working when you're on your laptop at 5 o'clock in the evening.
Yeah, and
whether you want to or not.
another factor I think that shows that the hybrid workers help with work-life balance or lifestyle is that we've seen regional populations and regional house prices boom because people have moved, had taken the advantage of being able to move further away from the city, only have to commute back to the office 1, 2, 3 times a week. So I've had 3 friends move down the surf coast here in Victoria to take advantage of hybrid work.
Oh,
so
really?
That's a real clear example that hybrid work benefits work-life balance.
And as you said earlier, you made that big call that you think in a year's time we'll be pretty much where we are in terms of Australia work from home rates.
I think that's right. I'll go back to the US evidence again. That's what firms are predicting, and they're the ones that, if anyone, are sort of pushing more towards having people back in the office. They think hybrid work is going to be pretty much the same where it is now.
Okay, so we may not even need this legislation, or whether or not it actually gets to go through.
Yeah, I think that's probably right. That's why I think it was kind of a political call to announce that, because it's probably not needed, particularly in Victoria, and it's better to be done nationally anyway rather than just in Victoria.
But one thing is for sure, it will still be creating many discussions going forward. Trent Wiltshire, thank you for joining us today on the Bloomberg Australia podcast.
Thank you, Chris.
If you found today's conversation insightful, be sure to follow the Bloomberg Australia podcast wherever you listen. This episode was recorded on the traditional lands of the Wurundjeri people. It was produced by Paul Allen and edited by Ainsley Chandler. I'm Chris Bourke, and I'll see you next week.